Okay, it is the end of January, so I am not going to do a kind of normal January wrap-up, but I wanted to talk about some books that I have been reading diligently throughout this month that has contributed greatly to my sanity and my mental health. And that series is the Princess Diaries series by Cabot. So what I did was I needed something to read, something that wasn't very intellectually challenging, simply because I did not have the capacity to deal with intellectually challenging at that moment, which I think like it's nothing to be ashamed of. I feel like, you know, life is not just about reading the really hard books and then showing off that I read this book, I read that book, and then having people praise you in the comment section for your incisive and insightful review of a challenging book. That kind of defeats the purpose of reading for me. I think like of course it's important to challenge yourself and to be up to date with what are the good books of the season, but at the same time sometimes you just need a break, and I need a break. I actually borrowed the entire series, like books 1 to 11 on Libby. So you just go up here and then you look at my search results. It's just Princess Diaries 1 to 11. The last time I read this series was when I was in secondary school. I read it from primary school till secondary school, and I actually shared my books with my brother, and whatever I couldn't buy because my parents didn't really let me buy books, I tried to borrow from like the school library, or I borrowed from public library. Back then I used to go to Jurong Public Library because I had tuition there, so I would just take a look and borrow whatever I could. But recently I feel like I would like to revisit some of the books in my past, especially books that I felt must have had an impact on me somehow as an adult now, but I wasn't sure how. So I was like, okay, let's start with Princess Diaries. And I thought that I was gonna find it not so interesting, but I actually found it even more interesting because there was so much that just went over my head in the past. Like, I think last time, because you are young and you are inexperienced, when you read something that's written obviously from a really biased and unreliable point of view, you tend to align yourself with it. And when the main character doesn't get something that someone else is saying to them, you also don't get it, you don't catch the signs. Maybe you did, but I certainly didn't. And then now as I'm reading it, I'm like, wow, I missed everything, like all the innuendo and all the signs, you know, just the signs that whatever was going to happen was going to happen, and there were all these signs along the way and I didn't catch it at all. Yeah, maybe I wasn't as bright as I thought I was when I was younger. So I really feel like this has been a very enriching experience for me to reread The Princess Diaries by Cabot. And yeah, actually I feel like I would like all my friends to reread it. I have managed to convince one person to read the series, but that's only because he hasn't had the privilege of reading it. In his time, the in books were like Hunger Games, but for me the in books were Princess Diaries, Mediator, Twilight, Harry Potter. But Harry Potter is everyone's thing, but we should move past Harry Potter at this moment. Okay, I'm going to give a summary of every book now. I made notes, but looking at it, I'm like, it's all spoilers. Would you mind? So if you feel like, oh, I do not want to be spoiled, I only read till book 4, then please just stop or like skip ahead, okay? Like, don't spoil yourself. I feel like you just need to know that everything will be alright in the end, so that is the important thing. So you just need to know that there is a main character, Mia. She is the girl who discovers at the age of 14 that she is actually the Princess of Genovia because her father, who had testicular cancer, cannot have children anymore. Her best friend is Lily. Her best friend's brother, older brother by 3 years, is Michael. Other people in this book are like Boris, the violin player, Tina, a sheik's daughter, so she also walks around with a bodyguard because her father is paranoid. Who else? There's her mother, who ends up with her algebra teacher, Frank Giannini. And then there is obviously her grandmother, who makes her life very difficult. Okay, so in book 1, her mother starts dating Giannini, and then Lily starts dating Boris, and then Mia, because she had a fight with Lily, she ends up being best friends with Tina. And this popular guy in school, after the news broke that she's the princess, he started trying to use her to get his picture in the press. But in the end, she discovers that his intentions are not pure, so she kind of dumps him, and then she goes to the dance with her friends, and she dances with Michael, Lily's older brother. Okay, so in book 2, she finds out that she has a secret admirer that keeps sending her emails. She hopes that it's Michael, but at the end of the day, we find out that it's actually her bio lab partner, Kenny. Her mother just finds out that she's pregnant. Her grandmother wants to arrange a big and lavish wedding, but of course her mother doesn't want to do that kind of thing, you know. She didn't want to have anything to do with royalty in the first place. And her father actually arranged to help her mother elope so they can have a private ceremony in Mexico. And then this is also when she finds out that Michael is not her secret admirer, so she starts dating Kenny instead. In book 3, she cannot find herself attracted to Kenny, no matter how hard he tries, and he keeps making advances, but she just keeps dodging his kisses. So she wants to break up with Kenny, but she also cannot do it until finals are over, because she doesn't want to, you know, make it difficult for him to get his studying done. And she's also obsessed about whether or not Michael and his classmate Judith is dating, because Judith is a really smart girl who clones fruit flies in her bedroom. She finds out later that Judith and Michael are not dating. Judith actually has like a college boyfriend. And then after that, Kenny somehow got misled into thinking that Mia and Boris, who is Lily's boyfriend, were having an affair behind Lily's back. He breaks up with her, and she's then free. And then Michael reveals to her that actually he also likes her back, so they start dating. In book 4, she's stuck in Genovia trying to have a long distance relationship with Michael for like 2 months. Michael is stuck at his grandparents' house, and then her grandmother strong arms her into attending a black and white ball. In book 5, she finds out that Michael doesn't want to go to his own prom, which means that she can't go either because she's a freshman. Lily cheats on her boyfriend with a busboy called Jangbu. So Boris is extremely heartbroken. He's very depressed. He drops a globe on his head, which starts bleeding. Because of this romantic gesture, Tina was very touched. She reached out to him and they started dating each other. Prom was cancelled because many workers in the service industry were going on a strike. Then prom was saved by Mia's grandmother, so Mia managed to get Michael's band to play for the prom, and that's how she got to go to the prom in the end. And then Jumbo and Lily didn't work out, so Lily was very sad about it because she finds out that Boris and Tina started dating. This is also when her mother gives birth to her younger brother Rocky. So in book 6, she's now in sophomore year, and her big crisis is that this evil cheerleader Lana told her that your boyfriend is in college, so he will expect you to do it. At that point in time, she's not ready to do it. Also, Boris got hot, so Lily became extra depressed because her ex-boyfriend that she dumped became very attractive and grew very tall and very buff. Mia was criticized by the new English teacher, Miss Martinez, for not having any discipline or structure in her writing. Mia also ends up being student council president because Lily strong-armed her into it, so she enters into a debate with Lana, which she wins resoundingly. Also, she got to meet Michael's roommate, Du Park, who says that she's too pretty for Michael. Michael is a guy who plays with his computer all day, and back in his country, which is Korea, guys who do that don't have girlfriends, let alone girlfriends that are as pretty as her. In book 7, she's student council president, and they are bankrupt because she spent too much money buying recycling bins because she cares about the environment. Her grandmother wants to buy an island, but she might be outbid by some rich asshole, so she gets Mia to butter up the rich asshole's son, JP, which stands for Jean Paul, by casting them as the lead characters in a musical called Braid, which is based on the true story of her ancestor who strangled this warlord with her braid. However, she's also starting to experience relationship problems with Michael because she keeps thinking like, is it the distance or something? But turns out Michael's parents were thinking of going through a divorce, so he was really distracted and he was just struggling with that. When her grandmother kind of insists that Mia and JP have to have a kiss on stage, JP did the nice thing by letting Michael know and helping Michael like rehearse his lines. So at the last moment, oh, a pigeon just came. Okay, at the last moment, Michael takes over his role and kisses Mia on stage instead. Okay, in book 8, we find out that Michael is going to Japan because he needs to build a robotic arm, so he may be there for at least a year. This puts a strain on their relationship. Mia grapples with received ideas about sex and virginity being like the precious gift and everything. She finds out that Michael is actually not a virgin, that Michael actually had a fling with Judith, the girl that she was very jealous and obsessed over back then. He actually had relations with her, but he says that it wasn't serious, and she had a boyfriend, but they weren't like in love with each other or anything. It wasn't anything committed. And Mia, like, her worldview was like shaken because she thought that she and him had the same values on, you know, sex and relationships, but I guess not. And then she accidentally kisses JP, who was kind of there for her. Michael sees and he walks away and he goes off to Japan, and Mia tries to race him down to the airport, but it's too late and he already left, so she's very heartbroken about it. So in book 9, this was actually like the hardest book for me to read because Mia becomes depressed. Like, she becomes seriously depressed. She has to see a therapist and everything, and she has to slowly work her way through her depression. Michael emails her like, how are you and everything, but she just cannot even bring herself to reply him because she just feels like if she replies him, she will just end up begging for him to take her back, so she deletes his emails. And she's just really like in a dark hole, you know, like when you read it, it's really heartbreaking. I actually cried a few times. Her best friend Lily thinks that she is dating JP, and the thing is, JP broke up with Lily for don't know what reason, and then JP is now friends with Mia, and they have gone to watch like Beauty and the Beast on Broadway and everything, and then the press caught a photo of them, so now everyone thinks that Mia and JP are dating, and Lily is mad pissed at Mia for like dating her ex-boyfriend. And this is what Mia doesn't know lah, you know, that JP is not a good person. So at the end, she manages to work through some of her problems. She starts dating JP, and she also manages to muster up the courage to reply Michael and be friends. This was really hard to read for me. So book 10, it's 2 years later, so she's now a senior, she's going to graduate. She has spent the past 2 years secretly writing a novel called Ransom My Heart. It's a really, how do I put it, it's a smutty romance novel set in the medieval era. There's a lot of sex, that's all I can say. She's in a stable relationship with JP, but because she doesn't feel much for him, the relationship hasn't really progressed past just kissing. It's also her 18th birthday, and Michael is returning from Japan to present, I guess, the cardio arm, the heart surgery machine that he invented that is going to sell for like $1 million each. So her grandmother wants her to go and, you know, butter up Michael and say like, can you bump us to the top of the list to buy your machine, so that the people of Genovia can feel like we are more suited to lead them and vote for us instead. And the thing is, Michael, even though she didn't ask, Michael just donated one for free entirely to Genovia. JP starts to do very problematic things, like he doesn't spend any time reading the book that Mia spent 2 years writing at all. He's too focused on his play. His play is called A Prince Among Men, and it really just reveals his desire to marry Mia and become a prince by marriage. And on top of that, he just automatically assumed that they were going to prom. He didn't even bother to ask her. And on top of that, he automatically assumed that they were going to spend prom night together. So he already booked a hotel room months in advance and didn't tell her, didn't even ask her or anything. That was also the day she finds out from Lily, who decides to make amends, I guess. She finds out that JP lied when he said he was a virgin and he was waiting for somebody to like give his precious gift to, and he actually like had sex with Lily before. He lied, and then when he broke up with Lily, he told Lily it's because that Mia is now single and he wants to go for her. So actually he was using Lily for the entire 9 months that they dated, or was it 6 months? Yeah, he was using her the entire time to just stay close to Mia, and he was just waiting for something to happen so he could get his chance to date the Princess of Genovia. So Mia dumps JP, and at that point in time Michael shows up and they officially start dating again. And then we have book 11, which is set 7 to 8 years in the future, because when book 10 ended she was 18, going to graduate, and in book 11 she's 25. She's about to get married to Michael, which is not the issue. Her love life is stable, there's nothing wrong with it, it's going great. But she finds out that she has a half sister, and her half sister is biracial, because her father had a relationship, I guess, with a jet pilot. So she died in like a flying accident, and she has a daughter called Olivia Grace. But Olivia Grace was currently in like a Cinderella situation where she was being raised by her biological aunt and her husband, but they were using the child support that they were receiving from Mia's father to fund their business, and they really spoiled their own children. Their own children have like flat screen TVs in their rooms and like all the really good things, but then like Olivia basically lived like Harry Potter, you know, in the tiniest room with nothing, no TV. Her aunt and her uncle don't even really care about her. Like, she came back with a bloodied nose because some horrible girl in school punched her in the nose, and they didn't even react to anything. All her aunt cared about was like the coffee that spilled on her expensive carpet. So they managed to fight for custody and they won custody. Another thing is her father and her mother get back together. This is because her mother's husband, the algebra teacher Frank, he died because he didn't take care of his health. And then when the mother found out that the father had another child somewhere, she didn't realize that he was such a complex man, and they decide to try again. So he abdicates the throne and Mia becomes the Queen of Genovia, and he becomes a normal person, so he can have a normal relationship with arguably the first love of his life, which is Mia's mother. And then throughout this entire book, remember what I said about unreliable narrator? There's a lot of dramatic irony in this book as there was in the other books, because the press keeps speculating on whether or not she's like pregnant and everything, and then she feels like, okay, I am getting a food baby because all I do is I keep like binge eating junk food. And then it turns out that she actually is pregnant, and not just that, but the press were right and she's pregnant with twins. So that is the happy ending for the entire series. I really do feel like everyone who used to enjoy this series should go and read it again, because it's clever. Like, it looks like one of those trashy YA novels that only girls will read, but no, I feel like anybody of any gender, in fact of any nationality, like, you can really enjoy this series because there's just so much to enjoy. There's references to popular TV shows, there's references to popular music, but then there's also a lot of dramatic irony, and it's really fun when you catch these little clues that Mia doesn't catch, and you're like, oh, she's so clueless, you know, and you just want to find out. You just want to see how she comes to that realization. It's really enjoyable. It's more enjoyable than watching Netflix shows, which is how I managed to read the entire series in like 2 weeks, because instead of watching shows, I just read the books during my lunch break, and it just goes by really fast. It's an excellent series. Yeah, I'm gonna go out now. Thanks for listening. I will talk about more serious books sometime soon.